Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Thank you guys for joining us for this firmware webinar. My name is Jamie Gill. I'm based out of Miami, Florida, and I do business development at Luxor Technology. A quick overview of our company. At Luxor, we're a Seattle-based tech company with solutions tailored for nearly every step of the Bitcoin mining value chain. We have one of the largest ASIC brokerages worldwide, offering purchasing and selling of new and used machines. We have a proprietary operating system, LuxOS, that boosts miner profitability and increases longevity for your ASICs, which we'll be discussing today. Luxor Mining Pool is one of the largest Bitcoin mining pools in the world with over 20 exahash under management. And we also offer hedging and financing products under Luxor derivatives. And finally, our research and data arm, Hashrate Index, is focused on collecting, consolidating, and sharing data from the mining industry. Moving on to the agenda for the webinar today, we will discuss the what, why, and how of firmware to help everyone understand the process of optimizing your mining operation. First, we will cover a general overview of what firmware is. And after that, we will move into a results-oriented discussion about why it is imperative to use it. Then go through a live demo of how to actually use LuxOS. And we will conclude with a live Q&A session. So please feel free to submit any questions you have directly to the Q&A box during the presentation, and we will do our best to address them all at the end. So kicking off, what is firmware? A general definition is it is just software embedded in hardware controlling how devices operate. So it's often referred to as an operating system or an OS, and it is critical for performance, efficiency, and functionality. Why does it matter? Well, firmware enables hardware to run more efficiently and adapt to new needs. So what is wrong with stock firmware? Stock firmware limits your ability to fully control and optimize your mining operation. The uninformative and difficult to use interface aside, there's only 3 performance profiles to choose from to run your miner: high power mode, default, and low power mode. This severely limits your ability to adapt to changing market conditions. And LuxOS is designed to remove these limitations, giving you the tools to increase performance, maximize profits, and reduce downtime. For example, instead of 3 options, by default, LuxOS offers 24 profiles to choose from, as well as the ability to make custom profiles. So what does LuxOS really provide? LuxOS provides, as discussed, the 24 custom profiles by default for preferred frequency and voltage settings, auto-tuning to minimize power consumption while maintaining a desired hash rate, advanced thermal management to prevent overheating and ensure consistent uptime, curtailment features to safely shed power and bring miners back online quickly and efficiently, and a robust API with over 45 commands for custom use cases. A couple key features to highlight include auto-tuner and advanced thermal management, or ATM as we call it. So let's explore how these work together to optimize your mining operation. The auto-tuner, essentially, when you buy an ASIC and it's running stock firmware, the chips come out of the box overvolted. So this means that they're receiving more power than necessary to run at a desired frequency or hash rate. So that means that it's costing you more money than necessary to actually operate your ASICs. LuxOS Auto-Tuner focuses on finding the lowest possible voltage to achieve your desired hash rate. By minimizing power usage, it maximizes efficiency, making it ideal for reducing energy costs and remaining profitable in fluctuating hash price and power price conditions. Advanced thermal management, or ATM, on the other hand, this ensures your miners operate safely by automatically finding the best profile to maintain a safe and healthy temperature. And if LuxOS detects the miner is overheating, it will underclock the miner to prevent damage rather than just rebooting. Once the temperature returns to a safe level, it restores the miner to its optimal profile, essentially getting rid of overheating reboots and protecting your thermals. How they work together is where the real magic happens, and together they're dynamically working to protect your hardware and maximize profitability. So every step of the way when ATM is underclocking your miner, AutoTuner is also working in the background to minimize power consumption. I did also want to mention a nice key feature we have is no-pick hashboard protection as well. And this essentially gives the operator the option to continue to run a miner with only 1 or 2 healthy boards. And this is good for mid-gen machines that may no longer make financial sense to repair the entire machine, and you wish to continue running with just one or two healthy boards. It is important, though, to remove the down boards. It's a nice feature to have, and I wanted to make sure to give it an honorable mention here. To expand further on curtailment, with LuxOS, we provide fast and safe curtailment features designed to optimize your fleet's power management. So how it works is in under 5 seconds, you can drop your power consumption to as low as 25 watts. When you wish to revert to regular consumption levels, they are restored to normal in less than 10 seconds, ensuring minimal downtime. The wake steps are fully customizable and gradually ramp miners back up, reducing strain on the hardware and managing thermal stress. This level of control helps operators respond to energy demands efficiently while protecting the equipment. And on the right, you can see how the power consumption transitions fast and smooth thanks to these features. Moving on to the second section, using LuxOS to optimize your fleet, why firmware? We're going to dive into some results and some numbers here. So first, we'll cover what are you optimizing for and what can you optimize for with LuxOS. So you're able to optimize your fleet based on specific goals. Number one may be hash rate maximization, and this is sort of the most, I guess, sexy of the options. You can boost your fleet's hash rate to increase bottom line revenue. And this is going to include overclocking your miners and can be beneficial if you have cheap power or new gen machines or hash prices high. Another option may be power consumption and efficiency. So this is ideal for managing energy price volatility, and it's good for operators with high power prices or mid-gen machines. And profit optimization as well. So this helps you adjust settings to achieve the highest profitability based on your unique cost structure. So this is great for times of low hash price and going to involve heavy underclocking. So what exactly is overclocking and underclocking? We're going to go through some specifications here. This table showcases the performance and improvements offered by LuxOS on an S19 J Pro 104T variant. So starting with the stock profile, you can see that the default hash rate is 104 terahash with a power consumption of just over 3,000 watts, bringing it in at an efficiency of 29.5 joules a terahash. We all know and love the S19 J Pro. With LuxOS deployed on this unit and auto tuner turned on, users can fine-tune the performance. So looking closer at some of the underclock options, this increases your efficiency. So essentially, profiles like -6 and -5 significantly reduce power consumption and can increase your efficiency by up to 22% compared to stock firmware. But that's at the cost of hash rate. Now, on the other hand, you can move up to profiles like +1 or +2, and the hash rate can increase to 117 terahash while maintaining an impressive efficiency gain of 5% over stock. However, if you are just shooting for efficiency, then of course you're going to shoot for the underclocks here. So by default, LuxOS offers 24 different steps. However, we're just showcasing these 9 as they're sort of our recommended safe zone. More than a +2 overclock can be dangerous for the miners depending on hardware conditions and ambient temperatures. So it's important to be careful when pushing outside of this safe zone. So let's talk about when to actually overclock and underclock based on market conditions. So this chart visualizes the daily profit of the S19 J Pro miner when using LuxOS at a power rate of 6 cents per kilowatt hour across various LuxOS performance steps and hash price levels. The x-axis here represents hash price in dollars per petahash per day, while the y-axis shows the daily profit in dollars. Each color-coded bar corresponds to a LuxOS performance step ranging from the -6 for maximum efficiency to step +2 for maximum hash rate. It's important to note that all of these results are including the efficiency increase from AutoTuner, so even the default step is LuxOS's improved default. Some things to note here from this chart. The most profitable profile actually moves with hash price. So as you can see, from around $35 per petahash per day to $45, a heavy underclock for max efficiency is the best profile to run. But as we move to $50 to $55 per petahash per day, the difference between profiles become much less significant. And as long as LuxOS AutoTuner is on, you're in good shape. Until we start to move to around $60 per petahash per day, where the max profile, the most profitable profile, is actually a +1 overclock. The flexibility allows miners to dynamically adapt to market conditions by choosing the best overall settings to maximize profitability or control costs. So overall, LuxOS really just empowers miners to fine-tune their operation based on energy costs, hash price fluctuations, rather than choosing between a couple preset options. Let's talk about some new gen machines as well. So this table highlights the performance improvements achievable with LuxOS on the S21 XP 270 terahash miner compared to its stock firmware. So the default settings deliver a hash rate of 270 terahash with a power consumption of 3,645 watts, resulting in an efficiency of 13.5 joules a terahash. So out of the box stock, the S21 XP is obviously significantly more efficient than the J Pro. But by using and adjusting LuxOS profiles, you can optimize your miner's performance based on your goals. Again, similar structure where maximum efficiency is gained from these lower hash rate tiers, but higher efficiency. So profiles like -6 reduce power consumption to only just over 2,200 watts with an efficiency improvement of 15% compared to stock. And then if you want to maximize your hash rate, you're able to do so, push to a profile like +2 here, and you can get the miner all the way up to 290 terahash while still maintaining an impressive efficiency improvement of 7%. So looking at a similar chart, but using the S21 XP for an example, you can see that because this default efficiency is higher on the miner, the lower hash price environment does not call for a heavy underclock. So this chart looks quite different. And in nearly every hash price scenario we're looking at, it appears that the +2 overclock is the most profitable option. Again, we're taking in the assumption that our power cost here is 6 cents per kilowatt hour. Over time, if hash price trends down significantly, then that may change. And for a model like this, it becomes less about maximizing efficiency, which it still does well, as you saw with the +2 increasing efficiency by 7%. But it's more about increasing the long-term health of this miner and maximizing hash rate. So if you wanted to run your miner at a heavy overclock with LuxOS, that's perfectly safe to do so as long as advanced thermal management is on. So if you want to push to a profile like +2 or +3 or +4 and your environment is too hot, it'll simply underclock itself until it finds that highest profile it can run safely. So this is key to ensuring you're protecting your new gen hardware if you do want to try to maximize your profit, depending on hash price environments. So looking at an example over the past year, we took a fleet of 10,000 S19 J Pros, for example, with the same power price of 6 cents per kilowatt hour, and we examined from January 2024 to December of 2024. By utilizing the ideal LuxOS profile based on movement in hash price, it would have increased cumulative profit over the year by 22.5%, resulting in 9.9 million in cumulative profits compared to 8.1 million with stock firmware. This significant difference here is a result of utilizing LuxOS to its full potential. So maximizing profit during different hash price environments is key. There was even some months like September, so post-halving in September of last year, where this fleet of J Pros would have actually lost money, would have been negative margin with stock, but LuxOS was able to turn a profit of over $100,000 by ensuring that it moved to that heavy underclock, maximizing efficiency, and bringing it back to a profitable step. It's important to note, all through each step, AutoTuner and ATM was utilized to ensure that there was maximum uptime and efficiency gains on each step. Moving on to a similar example with the S21 XP. So this model was launched in the summer of last year. So we just are looking at the last quarter of 2024. And if we're examining a fleet of, for example, 10,000 S21 XPs through Q4 with the same power cost of 6 cents per kilowatt hour, the cumulative profit with stock firmware would be 10.4 million versus cumulative profit with LuxOS 11.2 million. This represents over a 7% increase in cumulative profit when using LuxOS, or an additional $750,000 per quarter. Important to note, again, that we are discussing a more efficient machine by default. So unlike the J Pros, there's no months last quarter in which the XPs would have been negative margin or negative in the profit. So that percentage increase is smaller than the J Pros, but still quite significant. So putting the additional profit aside for a moment, it is important to note the previously mentioned that protecting the hardware while trying to overclock and maximize profit while this machine is still so profitable. And ATM's ensuring that you can increase the longevity of your machine and protect those thermals by avoiding any overheating. So in order for us to discuss a potential look ahead analysis or discussing any potential movement in 2025, it's important to first understand the Luxor hash price forward curve here. So this provides a projected outlook on hash price, which is a key metric for mining profitability. It's calculated from the current Bitcoin network difficulty, block rewards, transaction fees, combined with projected Bitcoin price and market dynamics. So by utilizing this, we're able to examine the next 5 months and identify, okay, let's assume an average hash price of around $60 per petahash per day. So coming back to that same example of 10,000 J Pros with the same power cost, we are going to examine the profitability impact from January to May of 2025. By utilizing Luxor's LuxOS, we are able to increase profitability by 18.5% to 3.2 million rather than 2.7 million with stock. With the same look-ahead analysis on the S21 XPs, we can see an increase of over $1.1 million or 6.5% cumulative profit increase. And overall, it's clear if you were to deploy today across your fleet, you would be bringing more sats in. So you're leaving sats on the table by remaining on stock firmware. So moving into section 3, we're going to discuss how to use LuxOS firmware. And first, we're going to discuss 2 main methods of actually installing LuxOS onto your ASICs. And then we're going to show you how to use it with a live demo. So first, we're going to discuss installation via LuxOS Commander. Commander is designed to simplify batch installation and management of LuxOS across your mining fleet. So what it offers is basically a desktop application compatible with all major operating systems, Windows, Linux, macOS, and it gives you the ability to first scan your network for miners, streamlining the identification process. Commander also offers direct installation of LuxOS onto your machines. So that means no SD cards, no messing around. It's as simple as clicking a button and the install will kick off. It also allows for bulk configuration and updates, allowing you to adjust settings across multiple miners efficiently. This tool is really just all about making firmware installation and management faster and easier, as well as more reliable for mining operators. Another key method is installation through Foreman. So we're really excited about this partnership, and we're thrilled to announce that Luxor is now Foreman's first and only certified firmware partner. And this integration brings together all the benefits from LuxOS with Foreman's mining management platform, making it even easier to optimize your profits. So you can directly install LuxOS from your Foreman dashboard. And depending on your goals, the Foreman interface may make it easier for you to configure, monitor, and optimize your miners all in one system. Especially if your operation is already integrated with Foreman, it makes things a lot easier. So once deployed, you can access all the key features from LuxOS that we've discussed here today direct through the Foreman dashboard, like Auto Tuner and ATM. This partnership really brings together 2 market leaders in the industry to help maximize your profitability. So now we're going to move into a live demonstration of LuxOS, and I'm going to pass things over to my colleague, Trey Carson, who is one of our forward deployment engineers, to walk you through a live demo of LuxOS Commander and some of the key features of the Foreman integration. So I'll pass it over to Trey now.
Hey folks, I'm Trey from the firmware team. Thanks for the intro, Jamie. I'll go ahead and share my screen and we can start taking a look at everything. Can you all see my screen? Jamie?
Yep,
Okay.
it's all good.
Minimize this Zoom window. So we'll start with a quick Commander overview. This is Commander after you download install. Effectively, what you want to do is you want to tell Commander what machines you want to scan, run a scan, and then take whatever appropriate action is needed. Installs, configuration, what have you. So if we hit Configure Networks, I have a little mining operation called Happy. And you see here, I've got Happy entered in just with a CIDR, but I could do it with a range. I could do it with a single IP. But we've got Happy selected for scan. So we'll save changes and scan the, and you'll see that all these start popping up, and all these miners are running LuxOS. So we're going to get a lot more information on these miners, profile and various, just configurations that Bitmain might not give us when we scan Bitmain. Down below, I should have some Bitmain machines. Yeah, there they are. So .35 we'll be working with today as far as Commander is concerned. But you'll see here, because it's a Bitmain machine, we don't get as much information, but we still do get the basics, right? So if I select this guy, and this could be 10 machines, 50 machines, 100 machines, what have you. It could be effectively any number of machines that you could select and do this. But I'm just going to hit that machine .35, and we'll just kick off an installation. You'll see that'll queue up, and it'll just run. It'll reach out to the miner, do what it's got to do. The miner will reboot, and here in a few minutes, we'll see it come up on LuxOS. But that's generally how Commander functions in an install from an install perspective. We'll come back to Commander here in a few minutes and talk about some of the other things that Commander offers. But to understand those options, it's best if we jump into the firmware and take a look at it. So I've got an S19 J Pro here. This is one of my machines, and you can see we're running at 75 terahash and 21 joules per terahash right now. This guy is just sitting on the dashboard. This is what you'll see when you install LuxOS. Most of this is informational. There's only a few things that you can actually change on the dashboard, but this is where you're going to kind of get most of your information from. So we get a nice little chart here that shows us various metrics, temperature, hash rate, what have you, over a given time period. You can do a few things, and filter out as needed. Down below, we get some fan information. How fast are our fans running? Are they running? What RPM are they running at? And then your general hash rate information over here. 1 minute, 15 minute, 24 hour, the things that you're kind of looking for when you're looking at the health of a miner or the performance of a miner. Tuner status. Note, this is not a button. This just tells you if it's on or off. The button is actually up here, right there. So I can turn on the tuner, turn off the tuner. I can set it to sleep. I can restart the mining process. I can reboot the device and blink the LED, what have you. But this is where you see whether or not it's enabled, and then you've got your pool status. Below that, you got a visual and some basic information for each hashboard. Now, this is one section that you can actually make changes from the dashboard. I could restart or shut down a given board if I wanted to, and I can do that on any board here. But the information that you're going to get on a per board basis are the profile. And we haven't talked about profiles yet in depth, but just think of a profile as a frequency and voltage combo for a given hash board. So if you wanted to create a profile, the only information it would need is what frequency and what voltage do you want to run at. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a minute. But you get the profile defaults. So for the 395 profile, it wants to run at 12.45 volts and 395 megahertz. And auto tuners drop that down to 12.19 volts and 394 megahertz on this board. You get some chip information. So right now I've got 126 healthy chips. If I had any unhealthy chips, they would show up here, and we determine health based on a score that I'll show you here in a second. But you will see the chips go into unknown status anytime the miner is kind of changing state. So if it's adjusting profile, if auto tuner is ramping or changing, if the machine is booting, during that process, you'll see the machines or the chips show up as unknown. Generally not an issue. It will occur though, so just be aware that it's not something you should be alarmed about as long as the machine is doing something. Now temperatures, this one's a bit important, right? These four temperatures are board level temperatures. Bitmain uses the exact same board temperatures, but they add roughly 15 degrees Celsius to the temperature and then display that as a chip temperature. So when you're used to seeing higher temperatures on chips, understand that when you're looking at LuxOS, you're effectively looking at the same temperature on the chips, but we're just showing you the real board sensor temperature instead of an estimated chip temperature sensor. So don't be alarmed at some of the temperatures that you see here. Just if you want to kind of put it to where it makes more sense, it's more familiar to Bitmain to you, just add 15 degrees to it, and that's roughly the chip temperature that you're looking at. But you get those temperature sensors for each board down here, and then just some basic pool information. But that's the dashboard. That's where you'll land right after you install LuxOS. Now on the profile screen, like I said, profiles are voltage and frequency combined, right? Just a description for how the miner should operate, voltage and frequency. We pre-build a bunch of different profiles for the machine. In this case, in every case, when you install LuxOS, LuxOS pulls Bitmain's default frequency and voltage. So out of the box, with no configuration changes, the machine is going to run effectively just like Bitmain did in terms of voltage and frequency. So this machine, when it came out of the factory, it was running 13.62 volts at 545 megahertz. By default, we start on the default profile. So out of the box, LuxOS is going to be running the same voltage and frequency. But from that voltage and frequency, we build 16 steps underclock and 8 steps overclock. Jamie earlier referenced the -6 step, which I'm running at right now. Um, but we can go all the way down to -16. I can also go to the +2 step that Jamie referenced, or anything in between. Uh, if I want to overclock a little bit, and if I want to push the machine a little harder, I can climb my way through these other profiles. I shouldn't even say climb. We could just jump straight to any profile we wanted to. But it is recommended to kind of test at the default +2 to -6 ranges. Anything after that, you just need to understand that the miner is getting pushed further than it normally does, and it needs to be a healthy machine in an ideal environment. You'll notice that some of these profiles have a tune flag. The tune flag just means that auto tuners had time on that profile to find a sweet spot. If I switch to the -5 profile, AutoTuner is going to engage and start moving voltage and frequencies around to find that sweet spot again for this profile. And at that point, it would get the tune flag. I can restore the profile back to its previous state with to whatever it originally was before AutoTuner tuned it. Just clicking restore here. And if I have a lot of tuned profiles, I can use this button up here to restore all of them. I can also create a custom profile. Anything you want, just put a name in, give it some voltage, give it a frequency. Take note that AutoTuner will not work on this because you've specified a voltage and frequency you want to run at. Therefore, AutoTuner is not going to adjust that. That's more of a you're asking the machine to do something specific, so we're not going to change what you're asking it to do. Otherwise, that's kind of how profiles function. Here we have chip health. And this is just an algorithm we use to determine if a chip is healthy or not. It's based off of hash rate, a few other factors. But in this case, it will be machine by machine. So different models have kind of different numbers. But for a J Pro, 81 or above as a score means the chip is healthy. When you work your way down the numbers, the chip color will change. When you get down to 16 or less, it basically means the chip's responding, but it's not doing much. And then you can get an unknown, like I said earlier, only really happens when you transition between different profiles or the miner's ramping, auto tuners making adjustments. That's when you'll see chips in unknown status. Also, if a board is off, removed, what have you, you also see unknown status for that. You can change the visuals here. Instead of showing the health score, you can go to frequency and you can go to hash rate. But otherwise, you just get a representation of each board showing from air intake top to air exhaust top, and then same for the bottom. So if you're talking to your engineer and you're like, hey, I want you to check this hash board, check the chip in top left corner, what have you, right? You can kind of explain based on airflow and top, bottom, left, right where the chip is because you can visualize it here. Otherwise, that's the profiles page. Now, AutoTuner works to reduce power consumption, but that's all it does. AutoTuner doesn't understand temperature. AutoTuner doesn't understand anything except for hash rate, chip health, and voltage. Right? So chip health does consist of temperature, but it doesn't explicitly work with temperature. However, we have another feature called ATM, uh, Advanced Thermal Management, and it does work off temperature. So auto tuner and ATM work together like on this kind of electric dance floor where they go back and forth trying to maintain temperature while trying to generate the most hash rate at the most efficient rate. So it's a combo that you need to use in most cases at least to get the best out of that miner, both from an efficiency standpoint and a healthy standpoint. So if ATM works on temperature, what temperatures does ATM work on? And what does it do when it encounters high or low temperatures? Well, these are your three big ones. Target temperature, the only thing it really does is manage fan speed. So my target temperature is set to 55. That's default. If I come over to the dashboard again and I look at my temperatures, I'm not anywhere near 55. So my fans are not running at 100%. But if I do hit 55, my fans are going to kick to 100% and they're going to stay there. They're going to run at that until the temperatures drop back down below 55 if they do. Hot temperature has a lot more impact on the miner's overall performance in terms of what profile it runs. And we'll talk a little bit about how ATM adjusts profiles in a minute, but hot temperature is the one that really sets the attitude of the miner. Uh, right now it's at 65, that's the default. So if the miner gets to 65 degrees Celsius on any sensor, it's going to drop down a profile. ATM will say, hey, go from whatever profile you're currently at to the one right below it. So I'm on -6 right now. I could, in theory, if my miner got too warm, automatically adjust to the -7 profile. If I'm still too warm, I can go to the -8, so on and so forth. This is the temperature that sets that threshold. Dangerous temperature is when the miner will completely shut down if any sensor reaches this temperature. Now, again, a lot of people say, hey, Bitmain runs at 85. Well, 85 is an estimation of roughly 70 degrees Celsius at the board. That's why it's default at 70 here, because that keeps us roughly in line from a shutdown perspective as to when Bitmain would, so it's familiar to people. You can adjust that, but typically most people leave it at 70. The miner will shut down if it hits that temperature, but there is some behavior that it follows in terms of what it does to try to recover, and we'll cover that here in a second. So now that we know we have three temperatures to work with, the primary one being our hot temperature, how does ATM determine what to do? Well, this is ATM's configuration here. So the first thing is we have a buffer. What we don't want to happen is we don't want the miner to reach, 65 degrees and then say, "Oh, I'm too hot," and go down a profile, cool off, and say, "Oh, I'm under 65 now. Let me bump back up and go back up to the next profile and warm up again to 65 and drop back down." That would cause this bouncing action and hash rate, and it wouldn't be healthy for the miner's hardware. So we give it a buffer window, and all it says is if you're within 5 degrees of the hot temperature, don't change profiles. So the miner has a few degrees to move around in. So that keeps you kind of level throughout, small fluctuations in ambient temperature throughout the day. If you have extreme temperature changes, then ATM is going to adjust, most likely because the miner will, its ambient temperature will just rise so much or lower so much. But the 5 degree buffer is there to keep you from bouncing. We then set a minimum and a maximum profile. Minimum profile is how low, which profile is the lowest profile you want me to go to in the event that I get too warm. And in most cases, we recommend no profile. Go as low as you want to through any of these profiles in order to maintain temperature and keep generating hash rate. So stay between those two. The max profile is the opposite. What's the highest profile you ever want me to go to in the event that I'm less than 5 degrees on average away from this? So when do you want me to bump up? I've got mine set to 395. So my machine will never go above the -6 profile, the 395 profile. Here's default. Go down 6 steps and you're at 395. So the miner will never go above that no matter how cool it gets. If it gets too warm, it'll go down, but it won't go up. I could easily change this to an overclock by just coming and setting it to one of the overclock profiles. And as long as the miner's cool, it'll keep going up. It does it in steps, so it'll go profile by profile, but it will go up. And then you have two more options, startup time and post ramping time. These two basically define the time limits that ATM engages with temperature. So after startup, when do you want ATM to engage? Typically, we say 1 minute. Just get in there and start measuring temperature and keeping the miner safe as fast as possible. Post ramping time. Since the miner ramped up to its whatever profile, when do you want ATM to re-engage and evaluate temperature? Again, 1 minute. Get in there and start evaluating temperature. That's ATM in a nutshell. But like I said, ATM cares about temperature. Auto tuner cares about frequency, voltage, and chip health. So you need to look at both of those from the perspective of I want better efficiency, but I also want to maintain my miner's health and temperature over time. Right? So pools, pretty much what you would expect with a few added bells and whistles. You can come in and add whatever pool you want, worker or sub account name, dot worker name, give it a password, what have you. Same thing that you're going to see on most firmware out there. We do offer things like hash rate split, where you can split hash rate based on a quota or a percentage for any purpose that that you have to do so. The the key here is that you get to make the determination as how that occurs, and we have a document in our docs page that shows you all the different variations that you can use that hash rate split for. So if you have a use case for it, it comes in very handy. You can add other groups of pools. You can add other pools, so you can add more than one. If you wanted to have failover, there's a way to describe failover in the settings section. So you can have pool failover. If one fails, it'll flip over to the next one, and you can add as effectively as many as you want, and it functions as you would expect. Now, logs are something that on Bitmain haven't typically been very good. And I don't mean that in the way that they write their logs where people can't understand them. I mean that there's not a lot of documentation that seems to be up to date and current with the way Bitmain displays logs. We kind of do the opposite. We make our logs not only as easy to read as possible, but we also follow up with some documentation for most major log entries. And that documentation is kind of an ever-growing, ever-evolving thing as LuxOS changes and as people run into different situations that we need to document. So it's a growing thing. I'll show you here in a few minutes. But our logs are what you would expect. Um, what's the status? Do I have any errors? We break them up into info, warn, error. You can export the log, save it locally. I mean, it's all your basic log features. You can see, let's see, auto tuner. Let's see, temp. Let's try temp. Yeah, there we go. So temperatures and such will show up. You can filter, what have you. But yeah, it's all there for you. And if something isn't clear, we want to try to make that log entry better. So just let us know. And then on to settings. Most of these are pretty straightforward. Uh, network configurations picked up from Bitmain. That's something important to remember about LuxOS is that we pick up the exact same configurations that Bitmain does on the network. So when you install LuxOS, the machine still looks the same from a network perspective. Same IP, same DHCP method most of the time. Uh, all the configurations that Bitmain has. Same thing for pools. When you install LuxOS, we adopt the pools. When you uninstall LuxOS, we reapply the same pools to Bitmain. So install, uninstall is very seamless, and it leaves you in the same state that you were before from a networking perspective, making it easy to find the miner and not have to worry about all the craziness that sometimes happens when miners change firmware versions. For updates, you just literally just click this button, and the miner will reach out, find out if there's an update. If there is, it'll pull it down, restart the mining process. Hashing will, stop and come back up. Takes about 5 minutes or so. It's not hard to do at all. You can enable automatic updates if there's a need to. Typically, we don't recommend those for large fleets, mainly because you don't want to have 10,000 machines rebooting and updating whenever they want to. You'd rather have it on some type of schedule that you control. You can change the behavior of automatic updates in our settings, but typically for the average for the average miner that has more than just a few machines in their garage, we just recommend leaving it off. Logging level. This is one of the advanced settings that a lot of people do end up coming and taking a look at. You can change logging level here, so you get more information the further down you go. But just know this is the only thing Well, yeah, I think it's the only process outside of an update that if you change it, you do have to restart the Lux mining service. Not anything to worry about, just something to be aware of. Down below, we've got a few pool settings, the automatic update information. Uh, Most of those you can leave on default. If you have questions about them, we can definitely go into them. No problem with that. Temperature control. So we only require one sensor per board to be functional in order for us to allow that board to hash. Remember that each board has 4 sensors, one in each corner. If this board lost 3 sensors, as long as the board would still hash, we'd still allow it to hash. Because one board sensor is going to get us in the market for most cases of the overall temperature for that board. And normally, if you don't have chip health problems, you're probably okay. Uh, these two are for how we determine if a temperature sensor is bad. A lot of people will use these three values here for troubleshooting in the event that they have a board that won't hash on Bitmain and they suspect that it's a temperature sensor. A lot of times they'll just throw LuxOS on it in order to activate these options here. Fan control. I should have touched on this here. Down below, we do have fan control here. You can change your fans to manual, set a power percentage. We only require one fan to be working in order for you to operate. So if you have a machine that's down a fan or two, as long as you can keep the machine cool, we'll allow it to run, but you can change that as needed. We also have immersion mode. So if you need to turn your machine, turn your fans off so you can put it into immersion, you just check that box there or flip that switch and it'll turn the fans off. Now there's two pretty important um, things down here. Number one is the no pick hashboard protection. And what this means is that if you turn this to false, it will let you run with less than 3 hashboards. As Jamie talked about earlier, you want to be careful when you do that because there's a reason why one hashboard isn't functional. But if you understand the reason, if the board has been removed, if you don't plan on putting the board back in and you understand that you're running on less than 3, then set this to false and run as needed. It is handy for a lot of people that have issues with hashboards. Just know what you're doing. And then there's overtemp auto recovery. And what this attempts to do is if the miner reaches 70 degrees, it will shut down and then reboot. That reboot period is roughly a minute. When the miner comes back up, if it's still too hot, it will reboot and double the wait time. And then it'll do that again if it's still too hot and double the wait time. So it's consistently doubling the wait time every time it reboots up to 5 times. After the fifth time, it stops, it remains down, and waits for you to come and reboot it manually. You'll still be able to get to the GUI. You'll still be able to restart from up here, but you will have to come and do it or send a command via API or Foreman or something like that. And then below, there's the uninstall button. So uninstall LuxOS. You just click the uninstall button, come back in 5 minutes, and the machine will be running Bitmain. It'll be on the same pool, and it'll be hashing again. It's just that simple. Speaking of configurations and Foreman earlier, you can see in Foreman, this machine that we're looking at is .33, right? We look at Foreman, .33 is right here. Oops, just open .33. .33 is right there. You can see that from a wattage hash rate perspective, we're pretty much even, right? And you also note that here we get a bunch of other options: frequency and voltage, auto tuning, power target, uninstall custom firmware. If you didn't have LuxOS installed, there'd be an install custom firmware button. Cooling mode. I mean, you get all these different options that you don't get with Bitmain, and it picks it up as LuxOS. So every machine will have an option for S19 J Pro 104 in my case, or 104 S19 J Pro LuxOS as seen by Foreman. That LuxOS tag gives it the ability to have these other options. But I can do installs, uninstalls all from right here. And this guy should be done. This is 35. 35 is seen right here. And if we look at 35, this is the one that we kicked off the install with Commander earlier. If we just refresh, should come up. There it is. So we're coming up. Auto tuner's doing its thing. We're back at default profile. Fans are running. Pools are up, same as it was on Bitmain. Everything's running as normal. So that's LuxOS in a nutshell. But I want to talk for a minute about if I can install LuxOS, what machines can I install it on? We have some documentation on that. If you come to docs.luxor.tech, down under the firmware section, we have a miner compatibility chart. You can come here and you can see all the different compatible hash boards, control boards, what have you. There are situations in which you need our help to install, but there's lots of situations where we can do that. It just depends on the firmware version that your Bitmain machine is running and the control board that it's running. But overall, we support a pretty wide variety of platforms, hash boards, and such, and we're ever expanding. So just keep an eye on this. If you're curious of whether or not your fleet can support LuxOS, just come here, take a look, ask Jamie, ask me, find us on Telegram, whatever you need to do. We'll be happy to help you out if you have a question or any problems. But that's LuxOS in a nutshell. Jamie, I think I'll kick it back over to
Awesome.
you, master of ceremonies here.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Trey. Appreciate it.
Mhm.
I'll switch back over to my screen here. Perfect. Okay, well, thanks for that demo. And as Trey mentioned, there is a more detailed compatibility breakdown in our documentation, but this is just a nice quick visual for you. We do have a team that's constantly working on updating support for new models. And if you are curious about results for your specific model or potential future support for any models, please feel free to reach out directly. Moving along here, just wanted to make sure to let you guys know, to round things out. Generally speaking, we are a 24/7 team. So we have over 80 team members worldwide, and that means that we can support you really any time of day. So feel free to reach out. Our support response time is typically under 1 hour. And we have a number of other resources available that can be accessed through these links here. Our documentation is really detailed, and I recommend having a scroll through that. And if you have any particular questions, please feel free to reach out. My email and Telegram are below there. So email is just jamie.gill@luxor.tech, and Telegram is just @jamiegill. And then you can find Luxor specifically through those links there. I did see we had some questions coming in, so we wanted to cap things off with a live Q&A. Feel free to submit any questions now if you haven't already. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we will scroll through some of these Q&As. And Trey, feel free to enter in and add any context if I happen to miss anything, but we're going to answer some of these live. They've all been anonymized, so don't worry about your name showing up, but we're just going to go through a few of these. Are you guys able to see the question now, Trey?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
see.
So for this person here, to me, what they're asking is, hey, we're seeing a static frequency per hash board on the GUI, and they've looked at some metrics, and it sounds like it's not auto tuning. What I'd recommend is updating your firmware to the latest version. Now, previous versions, we didn't have auto tuner on by default, but now any updated version will turn on auto tuner automatically. So there is a chance auto tuner is just not turned on for this miner if it's not running the most up-to-date version. So have a check on that. And if there is still any issues, feel free to reach out to us. Moving down the line here, will hash rate be reduced for an S19 J Pro with LuxOS firmware if one board has 120 chips healthy and 6 chips unhealthy? Yes, unfortunately, those 6 unhealthy chips will take away from the overall hash rate of your miner. But you can assure for the rest of the healthy chips that they're going to be consuming less energy than needed to run. So you're going to be able to salvage a bit of costs on your power price there. Let's see. Okay, how come the chip health can be more than 100? How can real hash rate be more than potential hash rate by that much? So the way the health score is calculated, it's actually off of expected hash rate, and hash rate can fluctuate quite a bit. So there is points where a healthy chip can be producing more than the expected hash rate, and that's why you'd see on the health score there over 100. Now, there is other views on the chips, like Trey went through, where you can look at specific frequency, and you can look at hash rate of the actual chip as well. But the health score is a nice, general overview to have a look and see if there's any unhealthy chips there. Okay. Trey, I don't know if you want to come in on this one, but so the question here is it possible to repair and restore partial functionality to a damaged hashboard using LuxOS firmware, even if they can't achieve the full rated hash rate? Now, generally, it depends on what's wrong with the hashboard, I guess, is what I would say. And Trey, I don't know if you want to add some color on that.
Yeah, so think about it in terms of thresholds, right? When Bitmain builds firmware, it builds into that firmware thresholds where it determines whether or not a board is good or bad. Now, there's obvious physical thresholds where if a board is damaged and communication can't occur, a board can't start, what have you, that's a different type of threshold. But from a firmware perspective, we all build different thresholds. There are times when Bitmain can't run a machine because of a hashboard issue where LuxOS can. It just depends on what the actual problem is and whether or not that trips a threshold that we either can or can't adjust. If we can't adjust it, and there are things that we can adjust, not necessarily to make failed board run or for a failed board to run, but we can try to adjust profile, frequency, voltage in order to get a different behavior out of a board that's problematic. And sometimes that's all you need, sometimes it isn't. So unfortunately, this is really a it depends question, but just think about it from a threshold perspective and try to figure out whether or not it crosses a threshold for a given firmware vendor.
Awesome. Thanks, Trey. Um, Can we set the min fan number to 0? Yes, you absolutely can. Assuming that you either have your own air cooling mechanisms or potentially running these miners on immersion, there is a setting for that, and you can set those fans to 0.
Yeah, you just turn on immersion mode and that'll effectively do the same thing. Excuse me.
What is the revenue model for licensing or purchase? So because we offer a number of other services, this can adjust. So to utilize LuxOS, it's by default just 2.8% of the overall hash rate is taken to cover the dev fee. So this enables us to continue to improve and gain support for new models. And that 2.8% comes down to 2.5% if you're also utilizing Luxor Pool. And we do have unique models for larger scale operations, and we're happy to have that conversation. So feel free to reach out and we can discuss custom cases there. Hey guys, looks like the compatibility model doesn't include LTC or Doge miners yet. Is that in the works? Now, realistically, our dev team, they work really hard. I feel like we're getting a new model every few weeks or so, and we really go where the demand is. So if there is a large demand for script miners in particular to develop some firmware, then it is a potential that we will get some compatibility. But right now, we're really just going where the market demand is and where the most people need it, to answer your question. Trey, I think I'm going to let you take this one here. We have a question. Please describe how this firmware operates on no-pick miners.
Same way. I mean, no pick or pick, it doesn't matter. The miner comes installed with the no pick protection enabled. So it's going to operate based on that versus whether or not the machine is actually a no pick or a pick miner. You can turn it off if you need to, but for the most part, they're going to operate the exact same way. If that answers the question, I hope it does.
What are the security requirements for remote LuxOS installation/update? Well, you're able to do it yourself, generally speaking. So there are some particular models, like Trey touched on earlier, that will require us to have VPN access and to do the deployment ourselves. But your specific security requirements for installation are really up to you. You just download Commander and connect to your network, and you're able to deploy LuxOS.
From a remote perspective, we work with really any VPN that you may want to give us access to, and you can restrict the access to a single machine, a subnet, a rack of miners, whatever you want. And then if you want us to install, we'll install. If you want us to help you troubleshoot something on LuxOS, we'll help you. So it's not limited to any particular number or VPN or size or anything like that, if you need help, get us in with the VPN and we'll help. I mean, that's what it kind of boils down to.
What is the downside of using firmware or third-party firmware in particular? I think this question is referring to. This is a good question. It unlocks so much more potential to do with your ASIC. So it can be dangerous if not done correctly. So for example, if you were to increase your dangerous board temperature or turn off advanced thermal management and try to overclock your miner, you can do damage to your hardware. So it is important to start cautiously, remain in that sort of 6 to 8 profile buffer that we were demonstrating before. Make sure advanced thermal management's on around every corner. Keep that on if you are going to overclock, or make sure your dangerous board temp, don't really change it off of the default unless you have a particular use case or you know what you're doing. So basically, it's supercharging your miner in some way. So you do have to be careful with any potential changes, especially on the overclocking side. Any plans for what's miner machines? This is a good question. Again, similar to the script miner question, we would love to have support for what's miner, but the market demand isn't there. Now, Bitmain has a large market share, and there are a ton of what's miners out there. But as I understand it, the stock firmware for what's miner, it's not as necessary. Like the Antminer and Bitmain stock firmware, it leaves so many sats on the table, and the GUI, the graphical user interface, is really limiting. So that puts priority there, as well as a larger market share on the Bitmain machine. So yes, it's in the works, it's in the pipeline, and if there's an increase in market demand, then of course. This is a good question. I have a large mining fleet of more than 5,000 miners. Does Luxor help with installation? Yes, absolutely. So not only can we help remotely, but depending on where you're at, we can send somebody out on site to help out. That's what we're here for, is to help support any questions you may have, custom dev fee structures, things along those lines. So please feel free to reach out directly, and we'll be happy to help you out. I'm in a power market like ERCOT. Can I use LuxOS to change profiles when power price changes? Yes, absolutely. That is a great use case for LuxOS. And in the future, we're actually exploring and building right now. Essentially, we're calling it iMiner, and it takes into account current power price, current hash price, and it moves your LuxOS profile to the optimal profitability profile based on those movements. So something like that is a great way to use LuxOS, and you can write scripts to even handle that yourself, or our team can help you get that going. So yes, I think that's a great use case. Trey, I'll let you sort of jump in on this one a bit. The question is there a documented API for accessing firmware remotely for both gathering state, control, and log retrieval?
Yeah, absolutely. We have an API that integrates a lot of the old Bitmain commands for reverse compatibility and also for general information gathering. But we also have LuxOS specific APIs that's documented. It's on our documents page. There's a whole API section. And there's a variety of ways to use it. You can use the straightforward API command. You can use our LuxOS Python toolkit, and you can script this into your Python, programs and whatnot. Or you can use our CLI tools. So there's a variety of ways to do what you're asking to do, one of which is just straight API. But we can do everything from going to sleep to, I mean, effectively everything that you see in the GUI and more is available via API. I mean, most major workflows are going to be supported through one of our tools or more. So yeah, absolutely.
We are out of time here, and I saw there was a few questions that did not get answered. Any question that was not answered, please feel free to reach out to me directly, or Trey or anybody on the team. So again, I'm going to share this slide one more time. My Telegram is just jamie.gill, and email is, Telegram is just @jamiegill. email is jamie.gill@luxor.tech. We appreciate you guys coming out today and looking forward to getting to meet some of you that I haven't met yet, or continuing to grow the relationships with those we already work with. So thank you guys.
See you, folks.